This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
And welcome back, everybody. You've heard this phrase before, that stress can kill. It's scientifically proven. Research shows it, that it is so detrimentally negative to your body and your life. Easier said than done when you're dealing with a stressful situation. Easier said than done when you're dealing with an autoimmune situation. And that can really impact your health. She's somebody that can coach you through a lot of this. In fact, that's her specialty. And she's a certified health and life coach, certified health and wellness coach. She's a trained PQ coach with positive intelligence, a certified functional nutrition informed professional. And she's got deep training in autoimmune diseases. And I'm going to read all the letters next to her name because I think it's just so cool. RN, BSN, MSN, MBA, PhD. I'm talking about Cheryl Patterson, who joins us once again on the program. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Steve. So good to see you again. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for being here and digging into this thing that is not just for somebody with autoimmune challenges, but just stress in general.
Mm-hmm.
We all have stress, right?
We do. It's universal. And it is a part of life. And actually, not only is stress a part of everyday life, it's unavoidable, but it's necessary. The human body actually needs to be stressed to a certain amount in certain ways, physically, mentally, in all the different domains of our life. Last time we talked, I talked about the seven different domains that I deal with in my coaching programs. You know, there's the physical domain, the mental or cognitive, emotional, vocational or work-related, financial, money mindset domain, social and relationships, and then your spiritual faith domain. So stress can affect all of those different domains or be caused by things occurring in each of those domains. And so those are the things that I deal with in my coaching programs.
Wow. So let's go to stress in our lives. And you might not even realize it that you're stressed out. Maybe you are realizing it. What are some of the things that we can do to minimize it?
Well, I want to start out talking about the different kinds of stress, because
Sure.
in answer to your question, depending on the type of stress, there will be different responses to minimize it and react to it. So I've done this presentation on stress many times to different kinds of groups. And I start out by informing everyone that, as we've already said, stress is necessary, but there are different kinds of stress. And there is a kind of stress called eustress. Eu is spelled EU. That's a prefix from the Greek that means good or normal. So eustress, it's a prefix that's used more in medical terminology. So eustress is good stress. Now, good stress comes with happy things in our life, like having a baby, getting married, graduating from college, getting a new job. Those are all positive things. They're desirable, they're beneficial. They stimulate us and they challenge us, but they aren't without a certain amount of stress. We all know that. Having a new baby, it's joyful, but it's stressful. Getting married is joyful, but it's stressful. Everything. But so that's eustress. And then there is distress. Dis is a prefix from the Greek that means bad or abnormal. Again, a prefix that's used a lot in medical terminology. So distress is bad stress. There's a variety of causes, different symptoms, and different problems. And those kinds of stress are helpful or harmful, rather. They're harmful to different areas of health and well-being, like getting a divorce or getting fired or a death in the family, different things that are distressful. But what I like to talk about to people is to give the example of how the same event can be positive to one person and negative to somebody else. So the example I like to give is two women working in a large marketing firm. Okay, they're in the same department. And one day their boss comes in and says to them, okay, girls, I want you each to develop a new marketing campaign because we have a potential client that we want to win over. And so I want each of you to develop a different marketing campaign to wow him and get his business. So you each have till next Tuesday to create a new program, and then we're going to present them at the same time to this new potential client. So then he leaves the room, and one woman reacts with, "Oh, this is what I've been waiting for. I'm so excited. I'm going to really knock their socks off. I'm going to get a raise. I'm going to get a promotion. I've been waiting for this opportunity." And the other woman melts down and says, "Oh my God, I can't do this. I have never developed a campaign on my own. I can't do this all by myself, much less get it done by Tuesday. I'm going to get fired. Oh my God." Same thing, reacted to differently. And that's the way it is with all kinds of events that occur in our lives. We'll react to them in different ways, depending on our background, our history, and all kinds of things like that. So that's an important thing to know. But then, so aside from eustress and distress, I also talk about toxic stress. Now, toxic stress is often trauma related, and I'm sure you've had many speakers here talk about trauma.
Yep.
It's a big,
If there's three things that we do here, three common themes, trauma be one of them. Absolutely. So huge.
We have just discovered through recent decades of research how prevalent trauma is in our society. And so we've got toxic stress, which is often trauma related. And when we have experienced trauma significant enough to cause this kind of stress, it actually, and I know your speakers have probably talked about this, it causes changes in our brains. And as we've been able to do more imaging techniques to actually observe the brain under stress, we know how the brain is physically changed by trauma. And so when we've got trauma-related stress, that's the kind of stress that pushes us beyond our normal coping ability so that we react to certain triggers. The triggers are the things that cause us to relive the trauma. We relive whether that trauma was during childhood or during teenage years, during middle age, or even, we're hearing more and more about elder abuse. Regardless of when the trauma was, we will have certain triggers that cause us to relive that trauma and cause stress. Now, this is so serious that it often requires someone with special training, like a psychiatrist, a psychologist. I mean, I am certified in trauma-informed care in nursing homes, in hospitals, to train caregivers and patients and families. But if somebody's really, I would cover it to a certain amount in my coaching courses, but I would also recognize if somebody has experienced this kind of stuff, they really need to see a specialist. And there are coaches that do specialize in that. But there is this toxic stress that is related to trauma or some kind of event, whether it was a single event or a prolonged event of abuse and neglect that is causing stress in that person's life. So that is a different kind of stress. And now there's a newer kind of stress that probably won't surprise you, and maybe you've heard of it, and it's called global stress. Have you heard about global stress?
Loosely, yes, and I have an idea of what it is.
We have become so global that we know in real time what's happening around this whole planet. Between our cell phones and our computers and our TVs, we know, like I said, practically in real time, what's happening around the world. And so this global stress is sort of a collective and a cumulative stress that's occurring to all of us that's caused by large scale events or problems like natural disasters, whether it's tornadoes and hurricanes and floods and fires, or whether it's violence, political instability, wars, economic downturns, all kinds of things that are affecting all of us, all that we're aware of. And because we're aware of this, it's affecting all of us in different ways. And
do you feel, I just want to jump in
ahead.
right at that point.
Go ahead.
Do you feel that the global stress, now let's look at it this way. You might live in the United States. There's something happening overseas. You heard about it. You're not directly affected by it. but it's on your radar. You
Yes.
know of it. Do you feel that all those things that are going on around us that we're so exposed to, and like you said, in real time, that after a while, we don't even know that we're stressed out by it, but it's floating out there in maybe our mind, subconscious, whatever.
Perfect. Thank you for saying that, because that really does segue into an important point, which is that as we're aware of all this going on, we often feel it as a background pressure that
Mm.
even when our personal lives are fairly stable and are fine, we're
Uh-huh.
still aware of all of this stuff going on around the world that does affect us, and it can amplify our personal minor stresses in our life. There's a thing called compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue
Mm.
means that we have felt so much compassion for other people that our own emotional system is fatigued and worn out. This happens a lot with, for example, pediatric nurses working on pediatric cancer units.
Oh yeah.
These nurses are dealing with children who are dying, and it isn't just the children, it's the parents who are grieving. And after a while, nurses develop this compassion fatigue because every day they're grieving and their hearts are breaking for their patients and the family members. And so they have to go through a certain amount of debriefing
This
with
is
therapy.
such a real thing and applies in many areas, especially to medical. You being a
Yeah, a
nursing
nurse.
background, I was
Yes.
connected to a nurse like 3 years ago, and she would have to take every third day off. So I don't know what it is. I'm just so drained. I don't know. I just can't. And she was, um, I don't know what they call them, but an in-home nurse where she had different patients and
Yeah,
like
yeah, home care,
home
hospice,
care.
yeah.
Thank you. And I said, you don't realize what's going on? You're an empath. You're taking it on." And she would even talk about, one gentleman's name was Perry. Perry had a challenge today with, meds and mom, and he's, bedridden and da 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 da. And she was wonderful as a nurse, but didn't see it. That what you just described. Every third day, I need a break. I can't do it. I don't know what it is. It's because you're taking it on.
A perfect example, and that's compassion fatigue.
Yeah.
And that does occur to people. It happens to first responders. So that's a kind of stress, again,
Yeah.
that I deal with in my coaching programs. And again, but this kind of stress, whether it's this stress or toxic stress, global stress, can affect people with autoimmune diseases or really any chronic illness, because it really affects the immune system. It really stresses the immune system, and
Yeah.
it can cause inflammation in the body. So it's an important topic to deal with in my coaching programs. Yeah, I wanted to give you some examples of some of the clients that I've worked with
Sure.
where stress was a focus for them. So I have this one client, Karen, who is about 40 years old, and she's a manager at a financial services company. And she received the diagnosis of MS, multiple sclerosis. And as she phrased it, she said, when I received that diagnosis, I felt like the floor just dropped out from underneath me. I felt like my body was betraying me.
Mm.
Um, she had fatigue. She had blurry vision, which was one of my first diagnoses. I was diagnosed 38 years ago. That was one of my first symptoms. She said I have vertigo and dizziness. That was one of my first symptoms when I developed MS.
Wow.
She said, and I have this numbness and tingling in my fingers, my hands, and around my shoulders. Same symptom I had too. And so while she's leading meetings and she's got projects, teams she's leading, she also has two school-age children. And so her initial reaction, of course, was shock and disbelief and why me and kinds of things. But as she was kind of spiraling downward, she learned about me and my history with MS and my coaching. So she came to me. And in our first month together, we focused mainly on stress. We
Mm.
talked about that and dealt with that through a number of sessions, because there's this bi-directional relationship between MS and stress, because stress can make MS worse. Chronic stress can trigger or intensify inflammation, and it could potentially contribute to flare-ups and exacerbate symptoms. So MS itself impacts the central nervous system in ways that can heighten the body's sensitivity to stress, making even small little stressors feel overwhelming. So MS makes stress harder to manage, and stress makes MS worse. It's a bidirectional thing. So we worked a lot on stress reduction, looking at stress in her life, anticipating potential stressors before they happen, and developing responses, rehearsing certain methods to deal with it and minimize the effect those stressors would have on her. And she learned some self-regulation tools of different kinds, breathing patterns, micro breaks and rest rituals, and then some quick nervous system resets, which are called neuro self-regulation techniques. And maybe you've had some other speakers talk about that, because there's about 12 different tools or techniques in that area of neuro self-regulation that are used by different therapists and coaches to help people handle high pressure moments in real time. So we focused on building resilience, because in the face of adversity, whether it's at work or at home, strengthening resilience really is one of the key factors in handling stress. So we focused on that a lot. Then I have this other client, Beverly. Beverly is like in her early 50s, and she's got Crohn's disease. She's had it for over 10 years. And she works at a marketing firm. And for her, it's the illness. Yes, it's the GI symptoms, diarrhea and stuff. And she's got some joint problems in her feet and her ankles. But more than that, she came to me and said, yeah, it's the symptoms, but I just feel like this stress is affecting my entire life. It's constantly affecting me. I feel like my relationships are strained. I'm saying no all the time to social plans. Even at home, she felt like she wasn't herself anymore. She said like she was like on a tightrope, walking all the time with unpredictable symptoms and never knowing what she was going to face. In fact, what she said to me, one of the first things she said is, I'm scared that this is my new normal and that I'm going to have to accept this and it's never going to get any better. This is as good as my life is ever going to get. And maybe it's going to get worse. So deep down, she had lost hope, giving up energy. So again, over our coaching program, we focused on her stress, reframing her responses to different kinds of stressors, building resilience. Like I said, that is so important for stress. Teaching her those neural regulation tools so that she can calm her body in the moment. Identifying hidden energy leaks. We can lose energy by being perfectionists.
Oh,
And you know what I'm talking about.
oh, I jumped off that train probably about 4 years ago, and I was
Good for
writing
you.
that since I was a kid. And what a liberating, relaxing, because you create your own stress to make something perfect, right?
Better than it needs to be. Better than, yes.
Yeah.
So yes, it's draining you. And people pleasing. That might be something else that you may find too.
Guilty as charged.
People pleaser, right.
Oh,
So we worked on the same kind of techniques that I did with Karen. And by week 10, she took a weekend trip away with some girlfriends. And she just felt like for the first time in my life in 10 years, I forgot that I had Crohn's disease. I felt relaxed. I felt rejuvenated and well rested. She came back and just felt, now, not that the coaching made her feel like she magically was cured overnight, but it helped her experience her illness in a different way.
and understand. I'm sure helped her understand, where it's coming from. Why am I like this? Cheryl, it's often said that a lot of this goes back to our upbringing and why we're people pleasers, why we're perfectionists, everything that we're identifying here. Do you go back, call it the root cause, and identify some of that from somebody's, maybe their childhood, why they might be doing what they're doing now?
Wow, I'm so glad you asked that, Steve. That leads me into the last example I want to talk about because it is important to do that. And so Caitlin is another client of mine who's in her early 20s, and she has juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. Now, that's a type of rheumatoid arthritis that occurs in children, and it can occur as early as toddlers. So in the 1970s, I worked for an orthopedic surgeon as his surgical nurse, and we did surgery on children that had JRA and adults with rheumatoid arthritis. And so she now is working as a veterinary assistant. She's a dog trainer, and she works in a dog rescue center. And she has joint problems, of course, because that's the main problem with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, joint problems, and she has flare-ups. But right now, she's emotionally concerned about her future. And as far as vocationally, she's afraid to ask for any accommodations because being young, she doesn't want to look like she can't do her job. But socially, she's withdrawing. And she said, and quote, she said, I feel like I'm stressed out all the time. So we focused on the stress response, 7 domains. But the one thing that we did especially work on is what's called identity level transformation. Identity level transformation is a coaching process and a method that's developed by Claire Zammit. And she's the founder of the Institute for Women-Centered Coaching. And women-centered coaching is a process where you do to transform your identity. You go back into your past. You look at your history, yourself, as you began to identify who you are, what you are as a child, and how that has affected your whole life, even up to your present identity. And so it's all about developing this transformation in your own personal identity, but it requires looking back all the way to your childhood and reviewing all that stuff. And so with this process, Caitlin saw herself differently. And she wrote like a new story for herself with a new vision. And so we're currently working on a growth pathway with this coaching method into her future vision, but it is based on a lot of her childhood experiences and memories that she has that have formed her identity of who she is. And she can rewrite that identity and her future vision.
It is just amazing when you figure that out, right? That just I call it connecting the dots, and when you realize why you do what you do now, even the stress thing. I was the stress man. I had an ulcer in 2016. Almost sent me on my birthday. I remember hanging out at the beach with my kids, and I'm like, and it was festering for months. And just the feeling of why is my stomach weird? What is going on? What's happening? To the point where I felt like my eyeballs were going to pop out of my head. I have, average blood pressure. It's all good. I was so worked up. I went to the hospital. That's how bad it was. And a year, it's not about me, but I want to share it for anybody else dealing. A year and a half ago or so, stressful situations presented. I'm like, oh, that ulcer's back. What's going on there? I was almost at the point of doing the same exact thing. And then I took some herbals, and that was the game changer for me. My first foray into herbal meds. Yeah. Cat's claw, catnip, and marshmallow root. What the heck is that? But in 3 days, it was amazing. Wow. Plus some aloe vera with pulp. And that's where I did the reset. And now, just the example you gave before, I was that person, that woman in the marketing agency, where something would present, and then you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Oh, what if this? What if that? What if this? Or if something changes in your life, I look at it as an opportunity now, as opposed to something that's going to challenge me in a bad way. It's all easier said than done, but it's a game changer when you figure this stuff all out.
Right. Yes. And sometimes you can figure it out on your own, as you were able to, but some people need a coach.
You need a coach. And if I had a coach, I probably wouldn't have had the second episode with the stress. And I did have a coach in some regards.
Okay.
Doing podcasts with people like you. That's where I learned all this. I'm not even kidding. Cheryl, am I kidding? I talked to a master herbalist in a podcast, and that's where I was like, oh, maybe I should try that. So in effect, I did sort of have coaches. You can't do it alone. We don't understand this stuff. We don't understand why we're doing what we're doing. But mostly, and I think you would agree from a medical background, we are making ourselves sick.
Oh, we are. Yes.
Yeah. How do we find you? Somebody, even just, I believe you offer a complimentary phone call just to kind of talk about it.
Yep. And you can go to my calendar, which the website is calendly.com. That's the website everybody's using these days for scheduling meetings. That's calendly.com// nurse cap, CAP, those are my initials, Cheryl Ann Patterson, cap, and then the number 75, and then another /45. So again, calendly.com/nursecap75/45. And you can go to my website, which is lifeenhancementcoaching.org. And my calendar is on there in a couple different places. And you can also read about the different coaching programs I have. And I have a bunch of different blogs that I've written and posted on there too for information. So again, that's lifeenhancementcoaching.org.
You've lived this life. You are now enhancing others based on your training, your experience, and your personal challenges. I don't think there's anything more important than what we're talking about today. I really don't, because it's life changing. And I'm not speaking from the side of an autoimmune challenge. Then, whew, wow. Yeah. Thank you for being here today and all the info. And just make that call, start a conversation, and change your life. Looking forward next time we get together.
Me too, Steve. Thank you so much.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.